Hello BookTube! Welcome to Lizzie Faye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and today I'd like to wrap up and show you what I read in our Library Bingo Challenge. Now, if you've watched any of my videos this summer, you have heard me say that I was participating in a Library Bingo Challenge. My husband and I both participated. Basically, our local library, for the first time, had a reading incentive for adults. Historically, they've always had a reading program in the summer for children, but this was the first year that they had a reading incentive for adults, and it basically consisted of a bingo card. Now, this is my bingo card. I filled my card. In fact, I read a total of 40 books during this time frame, but I'm going to tell you about the 24 books that I counted for my challenge. And then this is my husband's card. He almost filled his card. He had 3 spots that he did not get read. So we both did great, and I actually won something. So let me show you what I won. So going into the challenge, I knew that everyone who filled their card would have a prize, and I chose a bag. This says read, and there was you had a choice between this and a cup that had some sort of a reading slogan on it, and it was a plastic cup. So I love bags, and I decided to choose the bag. Then everybody who had at least one bingo got your name in a drawing for a Kindle Fire, and they gave away 2 Kindle Fires. So I filled my card, so I had a maximum of 5 bingos, and Randy had 3 bingos, and I actually won the drawing. I got a Kindle Fire, and I haven't even opened it yet. I decided I would open it on my video. Here's my little ticket, my winning ticket, and I thought I would just open it on camera. Now, this is not my first e-reader. I have a Nook that I've had maybe 3 or 4 years, but I have not read anything on it in a long time because I misplaced my charger. So I'm happy to have the Kindle. I probably will try to replace the charger on my Nook. I just haven't gotten around to it, but I'm excited. So I'm going to rip off the tab, and let's see what my new Kindle looks like. Here it is. Oh, it's blue on the back. It looks much like my Nook did, except the exciting thing about this, one thing this has that my Nook didn't have, is a camera, which is awesome. And of course, it came with the charger, so it's really pretty. It says Amazon on the back. I like the blue color. I'll need to get myself a case for it, and then I can start, now that it's open, I can charge it up and start downloading books. I am really excited. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from right to left and go across the challenges and show you what I read for each challenge, and I'm also going to show you what my husband read. Now, all of the books that I read I have already talked about in one of my wrap-ups during the month. The challenge started on June 20th, and so you could only count books that you read from June 20th to September 8th. So I'm going to tell you the challenge and what book I read and what my husband read. Now, if you are interested or curious about anything that my husband read, and if it's something I haven't read, obviously I'm not going to be able to tell you about it, but if you have any questions about it or you wonder what he thought of it, then definitely leave a comment down below, and I will ask him about the book, and I will reply back to you. I wish he would have done the video with me, but he's just super shy and he didn't want to. About half of the books we read were our own books, and then the other half came from the library. So I have checked out again everything that we checked out from the library except one, and so I'm going to show you the overview of everything that we read. The first challenge was to read a book with over 400 pages. I read Echo by Pam Muñoz Ryan. I have already done a full review of this on my channel, and I will link that down below. And for this challenge, Randy read Condominium by John D. MacDonald. He actually read several John D. MacDonald books for this challenge. He's read a lot by this author in the past, and so he was able to fit quite a few of these in with the challenges. This one, of course, over 400 pages. I don't know anything about this author. I know that they've been around a long time, and he's really been enjoying reading them. The second challenge was to read a book from the 19th century. I read Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I actually listened to most of this on audio, but I did follow along a good bit in the print book as well as read the footnotes in the back, and those were very helpful. Randy did not read a book from the 19th century. I did right at the end when I realized he hadn't read anything. I ordered A Christmas Carol for him. I said, you know, you could probably read this really quick and get it done, but he was finishing up something else, and so he just didn't have time to get to it. The next challenge was read a book by a female author, and he also did not read anything to count for this challenge. He did have a couple of books by female authors, but he used those for other challenges. The book I counted for that was Wedding Cake Murder by Joanne Fluke, and that was the one book I was not able to get by today for this video, but it is the I believe it is the 19th book in the Hannah Swenson Baking Mystery series by Joanne Fluke. The first being Chocolate Chip Cookie Murder, which I've talked about before in Cozy Mystery videos. Wedding Cake Murder is the book from the series that came out this year, and it was the only one that I hadn't read, so I was excited to get it read. The next challenge was to read a book with a one-word title. I read Aragon by Christopher Paolini, and Randy read Gesundheit by Patch Adams, MD. The next challenge was to read a book of short stories. I read Happily Ever After by Kiera Cass. Randy read A Simple Christmas by Mike Huckabee. The next challenge, we both read the same book. The challenge was to read a book set in another world, and after reading Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, I recommended it to Randy, and he read it also and enjoyed it. So far, this is the only Robin Hobb book that we've read, but I have collected several of them now, and I definitely plan to read some more, and I think he does too. The next challenge was to read a book written the year you were born. I picked an Agatha Christie mystery called A Caribbean Mystery, and I was born in 1964. Randy's a little younger than me. He was born in 1967, and he picked The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. I have read this. I read it, I believe, in December of last year. The next challenge was to read a biography or memoir. I listened to Teacher Man by Frank McCourt, and Randy read this chunker. This is The Personal Memoirs of Ulysses S. Grant. Now, for the next challenge, we both read the same book. The challenge was to read a book recommended by the librarians. Well, we have already been listening to the Mortal Instruments series on audio. We had started it, but almost didn't continue until one of the librarians, who was a fan of the series, was talking to me about it, and she said, don't give up on it, you know, keep going, it gets better, and she told me, you know, a little bit about it. So on her recommendation, we did continue the series, and the one we read for this challenge is the fourth one in the series, City of Fallen Angels, and these are by Cassandra Clare. The next challenge, to read an award-winning book. Randy went ahead and read Echo. This is a Newbery Honor book for this year, and since I was already counting this for something else, I read The Pinderwicks by Jean Birdsall. This is a National Book Award winner. Now, this is really the only small middle grade book that I counted. I really tried hard to read mostly adult books, and for the most part, the only middle grade books I counted were ones that were a good bit longer. This is almost 300 pages, and I didn't have any other award-winning books that I could count that I didn't need to use for some other challenge, so I went ahead and counted this one. But I figured, since I read a total of 40 books during that time frame, that you know, no one could say too much about me picking one or two middle grade books for the challenge. The next challenge was to read a book with a female heroine, and since I already had this one checked out from the library, Randy decided to go ahead and read this one for that challenge. The one I picked for that was one I was already reading for a book club for July, I believe, and it's The Girl on the Train by Paula Hawkins. The next challenge was to read a book based on a myth, and I was going to read The Red Pyramid by Rick Riordan, but I ended up moving that one to a different challenge because I had ordered Hidden Oracle thinking it was going to take a lot longer for it to come, and it ended up coming in plenty of time for both of us to listen to it, and so we counted this one for that challenge, and then I was able to use The Red Pyramid for a different challenge. This is the first book in the Trials of Apollo, and both of us counted this book for the Mythology Challenge. Of course, the middle space, as always in bingo, is the free space. So the next challenge after that is to read a book with a number in the title. Well, before reading Happily Ever After by Kiera Cass, I read The One by Kiera Cass. And my daughter's been wanting me to read these forever. I had already read the first two, so I was happy that I could check off 2 more books in this series for this challenge. Now, for that challenge, Randy got out one of his vintage John D. MacDonald paperbacks, and he read One Monday We Killed Them All. And the next challenge was to read a banned book. Well, Randy read Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler, and I suggested, because he had not filled the slot that says read a book that scares you, I had suggested he move this book to that slot and then read a different banned book, because he had talked about reading Harry Potter. He's never read Harry Potter either, and Harry Potter would fit the category to read a banned book, but he wasn't able to get it all done, and so another square had to go blank. But this one he read with the intention of counting it as his banned book. The one I read is 1984 by George Orwell. The next challenge is to read a book written by a celebrity. Well, this is a book that I picked up for him at a book sale recently. It's Escape from Andersonville, and one of the authors is Gene Hackman. And I picked a Fannie Flagg book, although now Fannie Flagg is known more for being an author. I first remember her as a television celebrity on game shows like Match Game, and so this was the only book of hers I had not read, Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe. The next book was to read a crime or mystery novel. At this point, we had already read a couple of others that we counted for other challenges, but for this particular challenge, Randy read Barrier Island by John D. MacDonald, and I read Dropped Dead Stitch by Maggie Sefton. This is one of the Kelly Flynn knitting mystery series. The next one is read a book that scares you. Randy did not fill in that blank, and the one I read is really kind of iffy, but this book I was scared was going to be creepier than it turned out to be, although it was a book about magicians fighting to the death, so that's kind of scary, and I was also scared that I wasn't going to like it, and it turned out that I wasn't really crazy about it. It was enjoyable to a point, but it wasn't really my type of book, and so I went ahead and counted it for that challenge, because I just am not a fan of horror, and I was not going to read a horror book, so this is about as creepy as I get when it comes down to it. Another book I could have counted for that challenge, but again, I was trying not to count middle grade books, was The Curse of the Campfire Weenies by David Lubar. This actually did have some pretty creepy stories in it, but it's a middle grade book. It wasn't that big, and so I figured I would be better off to count the larger book for the challenge. The next challenge was to reread a book you loved. Well, I read Miss Julia Speaks Her Mind, the first book in the Miss Julia series by Anne B. Ross, and I loved it over again just as much as I had loved it the first time. For that challenge, Randy read a book that I'm not familiar with. It is a nonfiction book by the author of Who Moved My Cheese, Spencer Johnson, MD, and it's called Peaks and Valleys. The next one is to read a nonfiction book. So what I counted for that was a book that I read for book club called The Girls of Atomic City, The Untold Story of the Women Who Helped Win World War II by Denise Kiernan. And Randy read a book called Living Forward by Michael Hyatt and Daniel Harkavy. All right, now we're down to the last line. The first challenge on the last line is to read a book with a color in the title. And Randy read Deep Blue by Randy Wayne White, and I read The Red Pyramid by Rick Riordan. The next challenge is to read a book that became a movie. I read The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants by Anne Brashers, and Randy read another John D. MacDonald book. This one is Cape Fear. For the challenge to read a book set in the future, we both read books from the same series, but different books. Randy read Wool by Hugh Howey. I had read this a few months ago, and I recommended it to him as a good book to read that was set in the future. And I read the sequel, which is actually really more of a prequel, and it's called Shift, also by Hugh Howey. The next challenge was to read a book set on a different continent, and Randy read Endless Night by Agatha Christie. And I actually listened to this on audio. This is A Moveable Feast by Ernest Hemingway. It takes place in Paris. And then the last one is to read a book based on a true story. Randy read The Circus Fire by Stuart Onan. I didn't get to read the one that I really wanted to read, which was The Little Way of Ruthie Lemming. I'm actually reading it right now. But I remembered that I had listened to A Life on the Road by Charles Kuralt in my car. So I was running out of time right at the end, and I decided to go ahead and count this for that challenge so that I could go ahead and fill my card. And this was very good. I really enjoyed it. I listened to an abridged audio version, and I have the print book here, and I hope to go back at some point and read the entire thing. But I enjoyed it a lot, and it was enough that I could count it for the challenge. So that's everything we read for the Library Bingo Challenge. And I'm so excited that I won a Kindle Fire. And of course, I will share it with my husband. We will both use it, I'm sure, because he worked just as hard as I did on this challenge. You know, and even though he didn't quite fill his card, he read some really big books. And I was really proud of him for jumping in and getting involved in the challenge. I'm sorry that he wouldn't do the video with me, but at least you got to see what he read and get an idea of the type of books that he likes to read. So that's all I have for this video. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.